name is Ken Lawson, your host here, Life in the Law. And yeah, I was thinking, what happened to my theme music? I forgot to send my producer the theme music, so yeah, we're going to do that next week. But anyway, here we got a really good show coming today. Our guest is Executive Director Liam Deeley. He is the Executive Director for the Hawaii Attorneys and Judges Assistance Program here in Hawaii, and every state has one. In fact, I'm from Ohio, that's why I practice law in Ohio, and I went through and got sober through the Ohio Attorneys and Lawyers Assistance Program in Columbus, Ohio. That's why I did my detox app. Most of you out there wondering, what the heck is he talking about? Yes, I'm a recovered drug addict and alcoholic. And it's not, our profession being attorneys, has the highest rate of depression. At 104 professions, John Hopkins did a study, right? And we are number one. We being attorneys are number one in depression, suicide rate, alcohol and drug abuse. Our divorce rate is sky high. And so why is it that people who come into this profession are subject to being in this category, Liam, of being on this chart for major depression,
right,
substance abuse, suicide, and again, it's not like in the middle of professions. We're at the top.
Right. A lot of it has to do with the nature of the profession. It's very stressful. There's a lot expected of people who practice law. We're expected to know what we're doing. We're supposed to project the sense that we know what we're talking about in very complicated matters, so we can give a sense of confidence to our clients and to the community. We want the community to believe in lawyers and the judicial system, that it's there to help them, and that there are people who are in the profession that are intelligent and have their act together. But the reality is that what we find is that lawyers are some of the last people to realize that they need help. One of the things we see a lot of is that they will, like you said, they'll lose their marriage, they will lose contact with their kids, they'll have their house foreclosed on, but the last thing that they will give up is the job, because lawyers are one of those professions where what you do is who you are. That's your whole identification, and I think that kind of is one of the things that draws us to the profession, is to say, hey, I've accomplished these feats of education that is far beyond what most people have. I've taken a bar exam, I've been trained, and that makes me feel good about myself. So anything that could hint at that going away is very difficult for someone who's wrapped in the midst of it to be realistic about.
Well, and I think too, at least, I can't speak for anybody else, I can speak for my case. For the longest time, my self-esteem was so low, right? And so I remember sitting in classrooms, whether it's in high school, undergrad, or law school, thinking, man, if these people knew exactly what's going on in my head, and I would sit there and hope. I hope the professor doesn't call on me.
Right.
Because if I get the wrong answer, everybody in the class is going to know, hey, you know what, that Lawson guy, he doesn't belong in here. And so, on one hand, my self-esteem is so low. On the other hand, my ego would compensate for that, right? And allow me to think, okay, if I can get to this position, being a lawyer, then I'll feel better about myself.
Right.
And so for a guy like me, it wasn't just that, it was almost, I had a blueprint in my mind of what I thought life was going to be like when I became an attorney, right? And then when I became an attorney and that blueprint didn't match up with the reality, then there's a disconnect.
Right.
I thought this was going to make me happy. I thought I was going to be satisfied. I thought that once I got to this point in my life that I could live happily ever after. Why is this hole still in my soul? And those are the kind of thoughts that was going through my mind until I came into recovery.
No, that's a very good point. And we put these pressures on ourselves when you say following that blueprint, because many of us, even before we decide where we're going to go to undergrad, it's already with the design of, how is this going to help me get into law school? And you start telling everybody in your life you're going to be a lawyer. So then, even if you have hesitations, you still take the LSAT, you go to law school. And everyone who's been in the first year of law school had that moment like, what have I gotten myself into? But it's too late.
Yeah.
Because you've already started laying the groundwork of telling everybody this is what I'm going to do. And then, of course, as people who practice law know, once you graduate and get out of law school and pass the bar, there's very little you learned in law school that teaches you how to actually practice law. So then you go through that whole situation again of, I don't know what I'm doing. And like you said, there's that hole. And a lot of times we tend to feed that hole with drugs and alcohol because it's a way for us to cope with getting through the stressors. I mean, you see a lot of drinking all through law school. Just people deal with the stress that way, and it's not discouraged. Where I went to law school at Northern Illinois University, our law school had its own liquor license, so that it could serve wine and beer at functions.
Right.
So it wasn't like there was any kind of don't do this. It was actually open and encouraged. That's why you got to see your professors outside of class, was to go have a drink with them.
But very few people actually have the disease of alcoholism and drug addiction. We just happen to have it, we being lawyers happen to have it at a higher percentage in our profession.
Yeah, and I think that there'd have to do more studies into that. There's been some speculation as to why that is. There's something about that personality that of people who are predisposed to drug addiction and alcoholism having that emptiness inside them that is trying to be filled. And sometimes we try to start off by doing it in healthy ways, things that society tells us are healthy ways to do it. And like you said, once you reach a point where that hole's still there, what else are you going to put into it? And at what point does a crutch become the only thing that's keeping you together? And when does feeding your addiction and taking care of your alcohol problem become more important than your ability to practice law?
Now, a lot of employers offer their employees assistance programs. Like if you have a problem, if you're an employee, if you have a depression, if you suffer from alcoholism or drug addiction, and you want to get help, you know, a lot of employers provide assistance programs that help facilitate getting the employee into treatment, etc. Tell me a little bit about the program here for the Hawaii lawyers and judges, and what you do as executive director to assist families and attorneys to get help.
Well, our program is we're funded through the dues that the members of the Hawaii State Bar pay, and basically it's doing the same type of math that business would do. Is that we have these highly trained people who have these issues that medical professionals tell us are diseases and can be treated, and instead of discarding them, that we should make an effort to help them get back on the right track. What we do at the Attorneys and Judges Assistance Program here in Hawaii is that we provide assistance to impaired judges, attorneys, and law students. And that basically comes in a variety of forms, either people who reach out to us and think they may have a problem and want some help, their partners or employees or people who they work with in the court system who think they may have a problem and call us to kind of stage an intervention. And then there are people who have disciplinary matters brought up against them, and the Office of Disciplinary Counsel believes that this may be an issue that if we provided them help for their drug or alcohol problem or their depression, that they may be able to resolve some of the issues that cause them to get into trouble in the first place. So we provide education to the bar about the services and how they can contact us. We're completely confidential. You know, our office is not, you know, under Rule 16 in the Supreme Court. We can't be compelled to give testimony or deposition.
So I'm a lawyer. I'm using, and I call you.
Right.
But I'm afraid to call you, right? Because one, the stigma of going, you know, at least admitting I have a problem. But if I call you, it's kept confidential.
Yes.
And then what do you do from there? If I say, look, you know what, I'm snorting too much cocaine, right? I'm drinking too much.
Right.
Popping too many pills. And you know, at one point I was doing all that, man.
Right. Well, you know, it's rarely just one. It's usually a combination. You know, people tend to be their own worst pharmacists. And basically, a lot of times people will reach out, and at the beginning, you know, you don't even have to tell me your name. You know, I just want to talk with you and kind of see where you're at and kind of tell you some of like we're talking about now and let them know that this is a safe place. And then get to, you know, maybe we can meet, and then, you know, we're going to try at some point to get you an evaluation to just see where you're at and what type of treatment would be appropriate. Now, should we hook you up with one of our 12-step programs that are just for attorneys, to keep your confidentiality so that you can have the help of an attorney? Do you need some more intense treatment? Do you need to go maybe into rehabilitation, to go through a detox program?
How do you make that determination?
We will have you get an assessment through one of the doctors that we have contact with, who can do these assessments. I used to do them myself, but so I can get a general idea of what is needed, but I want to have an independent type of evaluation. And then from there, it's also able, because lawyers like to deal with facts and logic, and say, like, here's a person who's got nothing to gain by saying that this is what is going on with you. And this is a medical person who says this is what you need to get better so that you can stop feeling like this. And I think it has a better impact on the person to want to receive the help that we can offer them. And at that point, we work with rehabilitation facilities here and on the mainland. I've already set up connections with those places as far as what kind of insurance they take and how quickly we can get somebody there. So basically, we want it to be, you making that call is probably the hardest thing that you have to do. But then after that, we want to be able to be with you the rest of the way to kind of take some of the weight off it. Because, I mean, really, picking up that phone is the hardest thing for people to do.
Oh, what happened, we'll get more into at least I'll get more into my story a little bit as we go along in the show. But when I finally had to make that call, man, a federal judge who was a friend of mine, Saul, could tell that something was wrong. She called the Bar Association, and then my lawyer got in touch with me. And at this point, I have complaints filed against me, disciplinary complaints. The DEA is investigating me for prescription fraud. And now I get this, right? And so I said, well, I'm going to call the Ohio Lawyer Assistance Program. So when I called, right, I didn't want to say I had a drug. So what I said, they said, well, what's wrong with you? I said, well, I'm just depressed.
Yeah.
But I would not say I was a drug addict and an alcoholic.
Drug addicts are depressed.
Yeah, well, I was depressed. Yeah, I had a good reason to be depressed too, looking at the penitentiary. But so I'm calling in there, so I'm lying initially because I'm thinking that, because we're told from the day that I was young, don't never say the word can't in this household. You can do anything, right? And so it's always fight. And so it's like, you know what, I can't let this beat me. So I can quit. I can quit when I want, you know what I mean? And the more I tried to quit on my own, the bigger failure it became. I just could not quit. And I couldn't understand why. I thought it had something to do with my morals. I thought it had something to do with my willpower, I thought it had something to do with me as a human being. I really couldn't see the illness part. And so my thought when I called for help was to kind of get some help, but also never to also think, well, by the time I go up to Columbus and see them, maybe I've kicked it.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that people who are suffering from addiction, they will admit to being depressed before they'll admit to an addiction. They'll go see a psychiatrist. They'll take antidepressants. Anything to kick the can down the road to the point where you actually have to give up the drugs and the alcohol, because that's the last thing that an alcoholic or an addict wants to do. So they will take every path they can to avoid coming to that realization. What we hope to do is to help them get there a little bit quicker. And if we have to talk about depression, and maybe depression is your issue, but we can get to the bottom of these things. And you're right, there's a lot of especially in the legal profession, you can't say can't. There's our whole profession is built around that. You can take any case that you want as long as you have a reasonable belief that you can be up to speed on it by the time it goes to court. And so it's just ingrained in us that we're supposed to be able to come across any problem, and if we put the time and the effort into it, we can find a solution to it. But this is like trying to study your way out of diabetes.
Right.
It's something that has to be treated in a medical way, and you have to learn how to deal with it on a daily basis in order to really find a change in that. And so part of that is the education to not just the legal community, but to the people who are suffering from the illness itself, to help them learn about that and come to a realization that they're not a bad person, they're just sick.
All right, with that we're going to go to a break, and again, this is Ken Lawson. I'm your host here at Life in the Law. We're talking with the Executive Director of the Hawaii Attorneys and Judges Assistance Program, Liam Deeley, and we're talking about recovery. How do you get into recovery? And it just doesn't apply to attorneys. I really would like this show to, and I think it touches people in all walks of life. I mean, addiction and alcoholism, it doesn't discriminate based on color, culture, religion. I mean, it affects all of us. And that's something we do have in common. We're talking about it with respect to our profession because of the high rate that we see it in attorneys, and what programs are available to attorneys so they can get sober and not continue to harm themselves and, more importantly, decline in the public. So when we come back from this break, I'll get more into a little bit of my story and how I ended up here in Hawaii and what it took for me to get sober. And we'll continue to talk with Liam about why it's so hard for people to ask for help, and how can families contact you even if the attorney that's sick doesn't want to get in touch with you. We'll be right back after this break.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on the ThinkTech digital series. The show is every Wednesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and I want you to watch this show because I think that when we talk with artists on the show about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, why they do it, I believe that it resonates within each of us and we find something inside of ourselves that brings us closer to all of humanity. That's what arts are there to do, and that's what I'm here to do on this show. That's Center Stage. It's on every Wednesday from 2 to 3 o'clock. I hope to see you there.
All right. Again, I'm your host, Ken Lawson, here on Life in the Law, and we are talking with Executive Director of the Hawaii Attorneys and Judges Assistance Program, Liam Deeley. We're talking about recovery from alcohol, drug abuse, depression, things that we see a lot, or at least I saw a lot in the profession. I see a lot here in Hawaii. As a teacher at the law school, I see it in students, and we talked a little bit about why that was and why it continues to be. I know in Ohio, 25% of all trial lawyers had an alcohol or drug abuse problem, and that seems to be across the board. Not of all attorneys, but just 25% of all trial attorneys. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about before we went to the break. You know, one thing I had to learn in recovery was there is a God and I'm not him. and that was important for me to understand, because when a person comes to you and says, you know what, my son is in trouble or I'm in trouble, and I did criminal law, and I did everything from disorderly conduct cases, speeding tickets, all the way to death penalty cases, all right? And so when people come into the office, they want to see results. In order for me to get the result that you want, even if it's not trying to get you off, but to get you the best deal, I got to get the prosecutor to cooperate. I have to get the judge to cooperate. I got to get your probation officer to cooperate. And if one of those pieces aren't in place, then I can't get for you what you need done, right? And so it becomes, at least for me, it became, I was very good at what I did. I had a very high profile practice, but it became a point to where you start thinking that you're God, that you have to play God, that you have to fix these things. And I lose sight of being in control of the only thing I can be in control of, which is me. And I can't control other people's actions. So that hole in the soul, those things that we talked about, that low self-esteem, you know, walking around pretending to be real confident when a lot of times I was just insecure. That fear of what you think about me, the fear of what other people thought about me. Like I said, I had a high profile practice, so if I ever lost a case, I mean, I would just go into depression. And my depression was not based on anything that I gave my best. My depression was based on what you thought of me.
Right.
They're not going to think that I'm good enough, you know. And so being consumed and living in that prison of what other people think about me, man, ate me up. I just didn't see it like that, though.
Right. You know, and the practice of law is one of the few professions where, you know, you talk about trial attorneys. You know, if you win a big jury trial, there's no better way than the community saying you did a great job and you're something special. And that's a high in itself, you know, to walk out of that courtroom and see, look what I was able to accomplish. And, you know, that kind of endorphin high is, you know, is followed by a low. And if you're already kind of, you know, in that pendulum of addiction, then basically, yeah, that's the kind of field you go into. But you know, those highs don't last very long, and so you're always constantly chasing after that approval, and it gets harder and harder for you to, because there's not enough awards that you can win. There's not enough cases that you can win. It's going to make you feel
right.
You know,
and see, I don't know that, you know, and I'm, because I remember when I first started doing criminal law, and I became pretty good at it in my first year. And Deion Sanders was playing for the Cincinnati Reds. He got arrested at the Red Stadium, and he was playing with the Dallas Cowboys. And his agent called and said, you know, Deion wants you to be his lawyer. He's seen you on the news. And I remember thinking, man, if I win this case, I'm gonna be all over ESPN. I'm gonna be happy. At this point, I'll be set. And we won that case. And I remember an hour after winning, walking back to my law office, man, and that thrill was gone. And I wasn't using then. I didn't drink during the week. I drank on the weekends, but I didn't drink, and I wasn't using any drugs.
Right.
But that hole in my soul was there, and I remember thinking, man, is this what life is about? By the time I got back to my office, my staff had balloons up. They had a cake. I said, what are you guys doing? They said, we want to celebrate the victory. We saw it on the news. And I said, put that stuff up. We got to get ready for the next case. I mean, in that short period of time, that thrill was gone, and I couldn't figure it out.
Right.
I couldn't figure it out, you know. And I guess my point is that I'm trying to fill this hole in my soul by grabbing outside stuff, fixing it in here,
Right.
and not realizing it was an inside job.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that people who get into recovery have to learn, is basically that, you know, you're the problem, and that unless you can be honest about where you're at and the things that you're doing in your life, and the things that you have control over, and the things that you most importantly don't have control over, that you're constantly trying to, you know, if I can just do this, if I can just do that, if I can just fix this, then I'm going to get there. But then again and again, you know, it falls off, that feeling of elation, and then, but then you keep trying harder and doing it again. You keep chasing it and chasing it and chasing it. And that's why, you know, a lot of the people who in the profession do develop alcohol and drug problems, the higher rate comes as they get older. So it's almost like that, you know, it makes sense that
So I was right on time with
yeah, you're right on time. You know, it's not a lot of people who are younger. You know, it's really when you get into, like, you know, 40 on up, and then by that time, people usually are in the law profession and have a certain degree of success. And so, yeah, that's the kind of thing that we try to teach, is that chasing that you know.
And because to the addict and alcoholic like me, it didn't seem like alcohol and drugs was the problem. You know, it seemed like, as you were alluding to a few minutes ago, that if my wife straightened up, if the kids acted right, man, if this guy would just leave me alone, if these people, if this judge would just listen to what I'm trying to say.
My client would just take my advice, you know.
All these things. And so it's almost like I got to wrestle the world to fit in a certain area in order for me to be okay. Right? And through recovery, we learn, you know what, the world is fine the way it is. What's not okay is me. Like you said, I'm the problem.
Right.
So the question becomes, how do I become, what's my solution? And that's my next question. What's the solution?
Well, the solution is, there's, you know, many studies in medical ideas about how they can chase addiction. Really, one of the longest term success has been some kind of, you know, eventual 12-step recovery program. And it's just basically, it's been around, it works. The other things that had success are built off it. And it's pretty much a progression of realizing, one, that you have this problem and you're powerless over it, and it's taking control of your whole life, and just admitting that, okay, I can't fix this. I'm not going to be able to fix this on my own. The next thing is then being able to accept help, be able to learn how to come to terms with the things that you feel make you feel bad about yourself, that drive that feeling of shame that, you know, you get a temporary reprieve from when you pop a pill or you take a drink. Finding a way to let that go, you know, and it's a process that has to continue it. And then it's one of those things that, while you said a lot of places have like an EAP program in the private sector, we found through Lawyers Assistance Program that we have a much better success rate when it's lawyers helping lawyers, because we are able to understand a lot like what you're saying. You know, what's going on in your life is a story that I've heard from a lot of people, similar to my own story and my own struggles with alcohol. That being able to reach out and work with people who have been where you are, but not only that, you can see somebody who's come through on the other side, who's had an amount of sobriety, and not only that, somebody who's now happy. And they'll tell you, I was as miserable as you were as we're meeting for this first time. But I'm telling you, if you do what we did, you're going to come through the other side of it. And not only that, are you going to be free of the drug and the alcohol, control in your life, but you can be happy. And
right.
So giving that hope to people.
That's what, it was that hope, man. And I remember, like I said, my habit I was on painkillers. I hurt my shoulder lifting weights and tore my rotator cuff, and that's how I got addicted to painkillers. As far as alcohol, as a weekend warrior, I drank maybe two nights out of a month on Friday, Saturday night. But once I drank, and my wife had told me a long time ago, she said, you're an alcoholic. And I said, no, I only drink twice a month. And she said, you don't understand. It's not how little you drink. It's once you start, you can't stop.
Right.
Right. And so I always, because I never did want one beer. I mean, if you offer me a beer and that's all you had, I would tell you no, because it just ain't enough.
Yeah,
right?
well, that's a waste of my time.
Yeah, well, if I ain't gonna drink to get drunk, I ain't drinking, right? So anyway, what's the purpose? It didn't taste good. So anyway, but my habit was my last year of using, after years of using painkillers, that was $1,000 a day, right? And so now, after doing this, I'm broke, houses in foreclosure, all the cars are getting repossessed. I got all these disciplinary complaints filed against me. The DEA's investigating me. I'm looking at going to federal penitentiary. I'm looking at being disbarred. I'm going to be all over the news because my cases were, I was very high profile. And I'm still using. I'm still walking in the pharmacies, man. Right. Knowing this and using, right? And so when I finally crashed, and when I finally went to detox, I was sober. That was the first time I was sober. My first day in detox, February 1st, 2007. February 2nd was my first day sober, where I hadn't used, and I was high or under something for at least 10 years, round clock. I had to sleep that way. I couldn't, I had to have, because the detox from opiates was so strong,
right, yeah.
I had to have something.
It will wake you up to make you take that pill. Yeah.
And so, I'm hopeless, right? And I tried it. I didn't commit suicide. My brother killed himself in my house a few years earlier. He and I drank alike. And so, after his suicide, man, and finding his body in there, he worked for me in my law firm. So, when I got to the point where I wanted to kill myself, I just couldn't do it because I knew the effect it was going to have on the rest of my family.
Right.
But I remember praying every night, man, God, I hope you don't wake me up the next morning. My wife, my kids, for everybody to be better off if I'm not here.
Right.
And so when I got sober, and my first day being sober and detox, I was so depressed, man. And I had a right to be. I had messed up my life and it affected so many other people. And so I didn't have any hope until I came into the 12-step recovery. And as you just suggested, hearing people's stories, that gave me hope, man. That gave me hope. And it's like, well, dang, if Liam can do it, maybe there's some hope for me, right? Maybe there's some hope for me. But we can't provide hope to others if we're afraid to tell our story.
Right.
And that's why I'm glad you came on the show. A lot of people, because it's a stigma with this illness.
Right.
Right? So most attorneys, especially doctors, they don't want nobody knowing.
Right.
Right? Which is okay.
Which is fine, and the second A is for anonymous, and we support that, and we want to be able to provide a safe environment for people to be able to get the help.
And for the most part, unless you voluntarily come out and say something, the attorney's confidentiality is always safe.
It's always safe. We don't keep any records, and even if it's a disciplinary matter, we'll just keep coded records, and when your case is completed, we shred all the files. So yeah, it's our number one priority. All
right, and that should provide relief to a lot of people that want to get help and are afraid that I don't want nobody knowing.
Right.
We gotta go to a quick break. Again, this is Ken Lawson, your host of Life in the Law, and I'm here with Executive Director Liam Deeley We'll come right back after this break, and we'll talk a little bit more about what families can do. We meant to talk about it during this past break, but I started running off at the mouth. It's normal. Hey, but that's the way it goes when you host the show, right? But we'll come back and we will talk about how families can get in touch with you, even though a hard-headed person like me is saying I don't have a problem.
Right.
Be right back.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. I'm here with Liz Shue, and we love Agritech. In fact, she's from the Department of Agriculture, and we're underwater, gurgle, 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 and we love things that have to do with agriculture, aquaponics, hydroponics, all that. So Liz, what is your interest in this?
To grow more local food for local people.
I knew that.
Yes.
Okay, it's 4 to 5 every other Monday. Come and see us on Agritech in the Islands. I'm Jay Fidel. Come learn with us. We'll see you then.
Aloha.
All right, we're back. I cannot wait until I give my producer my music. I mean, everybody, I mean, really, you guys think I'm joking. This is going to take this thing global. Anyway, so yeah, if you missed the first part of our show, you missed a good one, but guess what? You can check it out on YouTube. But we're here with Executive Director Liam Deeley of the Hawaii Attorneys and Judges Assistance Program. And before we went to break, what we were talking about is, you know, a lot of people around me knew I had a problem. Right? I'm lying, which is what a lot of addicts and alcoholics do. I mean, I'm lying. I'm telling everybody around me I stopped, I quit, etc. You know, and they knew. You know, they knew. Do you get calls from family members who are saying, you know what, I think my husband or my wife, who's an attorney, is having problems? And can families call you?
Yes. Anybody who has a concern about anybody in the practice of law or a law student can reach out to us for guidance of, you know, how they could approach someone. Because, like you said, everyone knows. It's just they're tired of being lied to. And so they know you're gonna lie, and they know you're gonna tell them that same, right, and so they're just tired of it. And so they're like, I'm just gonna skip the whole part where we fight about this, and I'm just gonna, you know, let you be, because obviously you don't want to change. And a lot of times when families reach out, they're kind of at their wits' end at the point of, you know, everything I've tried hasn't worked. And I really worried about this person, I really care about this person, but I'm getting to the point where I'm just going to have to walk away from the whole thing. And we need to, you know, let them know, first of all, that, you know, it is an illness, and that, you know, one of the amazing things that every time that you said, I promise, and then I'm going to stop, and that I'm sorry, you meant it when you said it. It's just being able to remember it the next time when that urge to get high comes through. And that's one of the things that we have to work on, but also with families to understand that this is an illness, and that, you know, if they're not open to listening to you after all this time, that we sometimes, as coming from the outside, have a greater impact, especially since we're, you know, work with for the Supreme Court. There's a level of authority that comes to that, you know, we're not coming to talk to you because we, you know, heard a rumor or something, but we have a pretty good idea there's something going on, and we want to be able to help you. And there's many ways to approach people. There's, you know, they laying out all the things like you said in your situation, like clearly saying, like, look, you are on the edge of really losing everything. You know, all your fears are about to come true about what people thought about you, to try to get that moment. But also, sometimes it helps a family to be able to relieve that stress from them, to be able to say, okay, we'll step in now, and we can give you guidance along the way, but we'll be the ones to come in and take the brunt of what's going to be an uncomfortable situation, and you can, you know, at least try to calm yourself down and know that we're going to help them out. And yes, they can reach out to us. Paralegals, we try to encourage them too, if they see something in the office to worry about, to reach out to us. And we get everything in between. We've had clients, we've had opposing counsel reach out to us.
And I think that's an important point, because a lot of people think, you know what, I don't want to seem heard, so I don't want to report him. I don't want to call the assistance program because I don't want to get him or her in trouble.
Right.
And for a guy like me, I need consequences is what got me sober.
Right.
You know, if I didn't feel any pain about my behavior, if the consequences weren't becoming so unmanageable and frightening, I would have never got sober. right? Consequences. And so we see people like Whitney Houston, we see people like Michael Jackson, who really have no one around them to say, you know what, no, or consequences, because Elvis is a good example, right? I mean, there's just nobody.
Yeah, there's nobody who
And
want to get
so-
off the payroll.
Right, but you know, for me, it came a time in my house, man, where there was no more tears. There was no more yelling. There was no more crying. I mean, I had ran through my family's emotions for so many years with the lies, with my actions, that they had what I call shark eyes, man. I mean, I would walk in the house and it was just dead eyes. When they would just look at me with a combination of self-pity and disgust. Almost
Right.
like, what's wrong with you? You know, and here he come again, right? And so it became those consequences, the DEA, all those things. So I just gave up.
Right.
Right. I just finally surrendered, and that's when you know, and I ended up going to the penitentiary. You know, after being 2 years sober and coming here, and that's how I met the whole. In fact, and that's another story. But you know, and I started doing meetings from Ohio to here, and I've been sober ever since. But as you said, you know, you guys provide hope. How does a person, or how can people get in touch with you in the legal profession who may see this and say, hey, you know what, I do know somebody has a problem, maybe I can call them?
We can be reached, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 808-260-6415. So anytime you want to reach out, you don't have to say who you are, if you're related to the person, you know, or like if you are, you don't have to identify yourself. Just kind of, you know, we're taking away that one big excuse of saying, I don't want people to know, I don't want people to find out. Because if, you know, you can call us because you're worried about somebody, or if you can call us because you're worried about yourself, then that's what we're there for, and, you know, that's the best way to get in contact with us. You know, when you're talking about people not wanting to report, you know, there's an ethical issue here. It's, you know, it's against the rules of ethics for an attorney to practice while impaired. And so, you know, there is a responsibility for other attorneys, if you see something, to say something. And it's to think that you're somehow being a rat or snitching someone else, that's just old thinking. And what you're really doing is you might be saving somebody's life and their career.
And that's exactly what happened to me when the judge reported me. Again, she was a friend of mine, continues to be a friend of mine to this day, but she saved my life. She literally saved my life because, I mean, to me, like I said, I was hopeless, I was ready to die. And I think it's, you know, and I teach ethics at the law school, and, you know, the snitch rule, you know, is viewed even to today as the snitch rule. But this is one aspect of it where actually you reporting a person could save their life, right?
You know, that just begins with, you know, I don't know why this person isn't performing the way they should be, and what you're seeing is not what's going on with their family, with their practice, with their clients.
What are some of the signs that people can look for?
Some of the signs are basically, is somebody missing filing deadlines? Is somebody not being in contact with the court or their clients? Is somebody missing court dates? Is somebody constantly rescheduling things that should really, you know, setting a hearing date? Why do we have to reschedule this for the 4th time? Those are the type of things where an initial reaction is, well, this person just doesn't take his job seriously and he's not a professional. But really, those are the signs that something else is going on. You know, very few people get to the point where they get licensed in a state only to just completely stop caring.
And see, what happened with me was I became such a established attorney that a lot of people, as you said, you know, I was in my mid-40s when I finally crashed, gave me the benefit of the doubt. So I'm coming up with excuses. I'm missing court dates. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a lie that's going to make you feel sorry for me. Once I get you to feel sorry for me, it will allow me to continue to use and drink the way I need to use and drink. So I need to come up with all these excuses that may sound crazy, but they're geared to make you feel sorry for me so that I can continue to do what I want to do. So I'm lying about having illnesses. I'm lying, man, anything I could do, because I couldn't go to court without drugs. I could not, you know, function. And I wouldn't.
And the thing is that in order to keep it going, you know, how elaborate the excuses are tends to be, and that's one of the signs too. Because if you really can't make a court date, you're going to call opposing counsel and say, hey, something came out, I can't make it, I need to reschedule it. Boom, that's it. Right. But if you start talking about, you know, the cow that fell off the overpass and almost hit your car, and then the person had the heart attack and the baby you had to deliver on the way.
Yeah.
You know, as the stories get more and more extreme because you're making this excuse for the 5th time.
Absolutely.
That's one of those signs too. It's like, well, that's preposterous. And to be able to reach out to someone like me in our department, it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to say who you are. You don't have to be worried about seeing a snitch. But not only are you protecting that person's clients, you're protecting the way the judiciary is viewed in the community, and more likely than not, you're saving that guy's life.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the only consequence of somebody whose whole image is wrapped up in being a lawyer is to say, look, you can keep doing what you're doing. No one's going to tell you how to live. You just can't practice law anymore. And sometimes that's it. They've lost everything else, but when we show up and say, you know, consequences, if you want to keep drinking, if you want to keep taking drugs, go ahead, but you just can't practice law.
Right.
And usually that's the one thing that finally, you know, shows people awake to say, okay, well, now this is really serious and I can't talk my way out of this anymore. And, you know, hopefully that's enough to, you say, have that kind of moment of clarity to be able to be realistic and allow people to help you.
Right, right. And again, people can call you partners, opposing counsel, judges, and do that in confidence.
Yes, absolutely. So they can give us as little or as much information as they want. We also have, if you go to our website, if you just Google hawaiiaap.net, there's anonymous email that you can send, so it doesn't have your name or anything. It just comes directly to me in a blank form, and you can just say who you're worried about, and if you're worried about them, and if you would like a reply, you can leave an email, and if you don't, then you've done your duty, and, you know.
And I would say this, you know, I would implore any attorney or anybody that has a problem. I mean, some of the worst things that ever happened to me turned out to be the best, right? And
Yeah,
some of the things that I thought was the best thing that could ever happen to me helped get me into detox, right? Having all these dreams about what life is about. And so the consequences that got me sober, now going through it, I was like, man, this is the worst thing could happen. I'm losing my house, I'm doing this and that. I'm going to prison. But now that all that's happened, looking back on it, I'm more effective to help others because of my past.
Right.
And all those consequences got me sober and allows me to be a use to others. And so instead of trying to take from the world to fix this hole, I give, right, of anything I got, which is mainly my past. And that hole seems to get filled by just giving. You know, my mother used to tell me that when I was little. She said, you know what? Because they would never give us anything on Christmas, right? So it's just like right before Christmas comes, Christmas Eve, I get the speech. You know it's better to give than to receive, right? Yeah, so that meant we was going to get some oranges and apples on Christmas, right? Some toys, right? And so I used to think, you know, that's just an excuse. But now I've learned, you know, like you said, alcohol and drugs wasn't our problem. It was our solution.
Right.
The problem was always our thinking, my belief system, how I thought life should operate, right? And so I would implore attorneys and families to contact you and know that it may seem like the worst day of their life.
Right.
Right? But actually, it's the best day of a new life.
It's the best day of a new life. And, you know, really what happened is that you had to face all those fears that you had been running away from.
Yeah.
And you came through the other side. And there was a better world, and you can tell people like that. And the little secret that people don't know about a 12-step program is that, you know, we're still self-centered narcissists. But in order for us to get the hope and the joy of going to the other side, we got to give it back to the people who need our help now. Because if we don't, I will forget where I came from unless I'm working with somebody who's where I was to remind me of how bad it can get if I just, start slipping.
Absolutely. Hey, well, thanks for coming, my brother.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I'll be working with you for years to come. And we're gonna come back next week with the new theme music, and I'm telling you, it's gonna rock this whole. It's gonna rock the world. All right. So this is Ken Lawson, your host, and we'll be back next week with another show. Until then, aloha.